All right, segment 2 of Coffee Table Titans, episode 4. We've got Dr. Edgar Ballenas here. We're in his office for Media Day.
Hello.
He's just finished up taking care of all the blood work and different medicals that all these fighters need, and he's actually been doing it for a long time. He's got a lot of stories that I'm excited to hear about. So, and he's got rockin' cowboy boots on. If you can't see that on the camera, there's some pretty badass set of boots. So, welcome, Doc.
Thank you. I introduced myself, Dr. Edgar Ballenas, and I've been with the State Athletic Commission here in Massachusetts pretty much since '05, emergency medicine by trade, so I fit in pretty well with what goes on in the cage and ringside as well, because I also work with the boxers and all the shows that occur, so it's not just mixed martial arts, it also is boxing. And at the beginning, boxing I felt was the sport that everyone would be most interested in. When I first got involved with MMA, I think it was because I'm naive about being what the sport was all about. I didn't quite understand it and therefore didn't quite enjoy it. However, after working particularly with the Cage Titans since, Mike, you said 2010?
Yeah, 7 years.
Yeah, I got to really understand the sport and actually come to really become a fan of the sport. And what is most important as far as my role is making sure that the individuals who go into the cage come out of it in safe, and that's what we always emphasize, safety of all the fighters.
Yeah.
And even prior to going into the cage, like you mentioned today, we ran a medical clinic, and that entails blood tests, an EKG, physical, things like that. I mean, in the past, it was funny, some of the stories you were trying to have me tell about, but, you know, in the past, you try to get fighters that walk into a ring, or it was back in the boxing days, no prior medicals, and you'd see a person come in, and right before the fight, for instance, there was this one guy who had very yellow-looking eyes, and usually when you see someone with yellow eyes, you worry about hepatitis, because that's a sign of hepatitis. So fortunately, we didn't let that particular individual fight. We don't want to see him get cut and then pass blood on to other individuals that are in that particular area. So it's come a long way. I'm proud to be part of the other doctors who do serve as ringside physicians in the state of Massachusetts. I did a lot of training in Connecticut when I first got started. Connecticut had Foxwoods, Mohegans, so they drew a lot of fights down there, and a lot of marquee type of fights. Showtime, HBO, ESPN. So it was a nice learning experience. I give my respect to all the doctors down in the Connecticut area, and so I think we brought our level to a real high level with regards to, again, making everything safe for fighters. I know it's an expense. I wish we could do something about it. For instance, imaging studies is very important for CAT scans of the brain or MRIs of the brain. We want to make sure that no one has any pre-existing issues, with regards to it. And God forbid if they did, and then they get into the cage or into the ring, it could be quite detrimental to that particular fighter.
So switching gears, I got a question.
Yes, of course.
Obviously, you mentioned you've been around since 2005, and this is kind of the information that we love to get out in these podcasts.
Right.
It's kind of behind the scenes stuff that you don't hear about every day.
Yeah.
Everybody sees the guys in the cage, but they don't hear the story behind the story, or the people like yourself who's been around for a long time, like memorable moments. So in 10 or 12 years you've been doing this, what's a memorable fight for you that you've obviously done the UFC, you've done Bellator, all the way down to the local level.
Right.
What's a fight that, number one, you were like, wow, this is an amazing fight, and it's one of your most memorable fights you've been?
Well, there's a few. I'm glad
you can give us 2 or 3 if it's easier.
Yeah, I think the first UFC fight
in Boston.
In Boston, right, the TD Garden. I mean, I had worked a couple of boxing shows at the TD Garden, but they were not sold out. I mean, the UFC that night, I mean, if you recall, I think you were there. Yeah. The place was just standing room only, and the theatrics, I mean, the way it's put on, and you know, the UFC's first fight in Massachusetts, and of course at the TD Garden. It was definitely one of my memorable events to not just work but partake in.
Because that must have been memorable for other reasons, because
Yeah.
many of the main purpose of the Athletic Commission getting set up back in 2009
Right.
was to be able to have regulations so
Right.
that you could attract the UFC. And you were the head of the medical advisory board?
Yeah, I was the chairperson at the time, medical advisory committee, and yeah, we had a lot of meetings that led to the state to sanction mixed martial
Because without that, we would have never got the UFC.
Correct.
And that's like, and that was the first UFC. That was like right when you got started, because I think it was 2010, if I'm not mistaken. The first one.
Thereabouts, yeah.
2011-ish.
That was 2010. That was Frankie Edgar fighting BJ Penn for the second
Penn,
time,
exactly.
defending his title, and that was
Yeah.
also when Randy Couture
Lozon
choked
fight on
out.
that show?
Yeah, Lozon, of course he did.
Yeah,
Lozon
oh, yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
did. for sure.
Did he do
Michael Johnson.
Michael Johnson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then, and that was
But,
also
look-
James Toney got choked out
Yeah,
by
I-
Randy Couture. I remember that one too.
Yeah, to me as a fan of boxing, to meet Tony actually was a great memory.
wow.
But let me tell you something that was really funny. So here I am. I wasn't. We take turns during each particular bout. So I wasn't doing this one particular bout, but I was sitting in the first row, and there was this guy who came running over, planting himself down on the ground, you know. And then all of a sudden, one of the security guys came over. And I actually offered him a chair, and right next to where I was sitting, he had some other guy leave, and he sat next to me. And then there were a bunch of people coming up to him, giving him a program to get his autograph. Of course, like I said, I was new to MMA. I didn't know who this particular guy was. And then I looked at his face, I opened up my program, and the guy's name was Anderson Silva. So
you didn't give Anderson Silva a chance? And that was the height of his popularity.
Yeah. That was,
Oh yeah, just like I said, what, 210 or 211.
210.
So
Top of the
then
world
I'm looking, and I'm telling you, everyone came up to this guy. He was a nice guy. He's giving him autographs. You know, he was in that particular corner because he was whoever was fighting that particular night. You know, he was with that particular corner. So sure enough, I grabbed my pen and didn't really know who Anderson Silva was except for his photo in the magazine there. And so he was kind enough to throw an autograph, and
He's only like the Babe Ruth of MMA.
and then at the end of the night, then I sheepishly went to some of the other guys who knew the sport, and I said, "Hey, dude, I got this guy's signature, and he's on this photo, in a magazine." And they said, "Seriously, you got a photograph from Anderson Silva?
Yeah.
He's only the biggest,
Kind of a big deal.
biggest drawer,
So we gotta wrap this segment because we only got
Yeah.
2 minutes. So
Okay.
quickly, if you could do it quickly, because I like this piece. The worst injury you've seen in either your boxing or MMA career. Obviously you can't say who it was.
Well, we said. I mean, there was this one guy. I was working. Actually, there was a show in Foxwoods. It was Muay Thai.
Okay.
It was what's the organization?
Lion Fight?
Lion Fight.
Exactly, Lion Fight.
Was it the girl fight with the elbow?
No. It was a guy who was not unconscious. I mean, absolutely just. He was out cold before he even hit the canvas. It was a kick.
Yeah.
And a severe kick. And he was shaking, so he was having a little seizure type of activity.
Oh, wow.
Blood was flowing out of his mouth. And it was one of those things that. You really have to act quickly with regards to getting up to the hospital because your biggest concern is that, if closed head injury like hematoma, subdural hematomas, things like that. But that really shook. It didn't shake me up because, like I said, I'm emergency medicine trained. We see all sorts of trauma. I trained out in New York City, so we had gunshot wounds. We had all sorts of things like that. But a guy was fighting us when he started to come to, because they don't know where they're at. They're all confused, and blood spitting out of his mouth, But we were able to get him to the hospital, and no internal injury to his brain, but he had a severe jaw fracture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, way to end on a sour note, but...
Well, I mean, he did well.
Yeah.
Apparently he continues to fight.
All right, so good.
So that's the good thing about it, getting cleared after something bad like that happens. But
Live to fight another day.
Well,
there
Doc,
you go.
thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
you got to
of course.
run. Thank you very much for your time. Great
Absolutely.
stories. I like hearing all the help that you provide
There's a
and how you
ton
got
more.
started. So
We'll have to have you back when you have more time. We can do a couple
Absolutely.
segments.
Absolutely.
There's a ton more. All right, thank you very much.
we'll be back for segment 3. Take care
All right.
and enjoy. Thanks.